Okay, so we're up to part 4. This is the last part for this lecture. And we're going to talk here about how the media can influence people in how they think about crime and criminals. So there's 3 models that research has adopted to explain this relationship. They are the effects model, the functionalist model, and the institutional model. This explains what people are thinking when they see stuff in the media. And this is important, so you need to take note of this. Okay, first of all, we'll talk about the effects model. Just like it sounds, people are affected by what they see and hear in the news. It treats people like sheep, like we think a lot of you could have been before you started uni and started to become educated and thinkers. People will believe it must be true, as it wouldn't be on the news if it were not true. They're buying what the media are selling, so to speak. So think about these people in North Korea and Russia. They just see what they see and believe their leaders are the right ones and amazing, and that the US is terrible, because that's what they're fed on a daily basis. So they just believe what they see. It assumes that consumers of media unquestioningly believe the view of crime with which they are presented. But do you think this is really true? Think about yourself. Are you passive and uncritical about what you see in the news? The functionalist model. Well, this views you as being an active participant. So when you see or hear the news, you're not just a sheep and taking it in, but you are an active participant. You have an active choice in what you watch and what you believe, and you can choose to watch crime shows, and most of us will know that they're fiction, but on the news that it's real. So we can tell the difference between what's fictional and what's real. So I'm sure that a lot of you watch a lot of crime shows and you're able to make that active differentiation. But why would it be called the functionalist model? Well, it's about the gratification that you are getting as you seek out information about crime, and it's gratifying your needs and desires to watch those shows. So importantly, you're not as passive as in the effects model. Okay, so we're moving up from those being really passive to those who are able to view this and know that most of it is fiction and not real. Okay, so finally we have the institutional model. And that first sentence might sound a little bit technical, but let's put it into layman terms. What you see on TV and read in the papers is subjectively interpreted by you, but mediated by what you've experienced in real life. So you might see something, but then say, but in my experience, so you're relating it back to your own experience. What is a social control? Well, what do you think it might be? Something that would shape the way we act as a society. It's a manipulation of how we think. Why don't you run a stop sign when you're driving? The chances are you won't get caught, so why not just go straight through it? Well, the sign is a form of social control. It's telling you that you need to stop so that you won't have an accident or you won't get caught. The media is telling us what we should and shouldn't do as a form of social control. So we don't even realise this is going on, because the media just presents things to us and people are affected by it. The media is much bigger than we ever thought it was. So let's relate this to a TV show. The media would have us believe that in real life, bikies are bad people. They commit a lot of crime, they hurt a lot of people. But have any of you ever watched the TV show Sons of Anarchy? That show would make you love them and think they're just misunderstood. But the news would have you believe they're drug runners with guns who are hurting people up and down the coast. So we have this differentiation or problem between what the media is presenting to us as reality and what they are presenting to us as fictional viewing, and some people can't tell the difference. All right, so here are some popular myths about crime. Crime is on the rise. Crime is not on the rise. Violent crime rates have either declined or stayed steady for the last 15 years, although they have started to head up a bit in the last couple of years, but nowhere near the rates they were at 20 years ago, still hugely below that. Most people, not the enlightened ones now like you, think that crime is increasing. You know, the old story, there's a rapist on every street corner and you shouldn't go out anywhere but stay at home locked in. So crime is not on the rise. Myth, most crimes are violent in nature. Media tend to portray most crimes as being violent in nature, but they're not. The most number of crimes are non-violent property crime, such as having your car stolen or your house broken into or things stolen from outside areas. And we're not talking here about carjacking, we're just talking here about cars being stolen. We do hear a lot about that in the media, but we certainly don't hear about property crime, which is theft from shops, homes, that sort of thing. That is by far the most amount of crime that goes on in our society. But the media would have you believe that most crimes are violent in nature. The myth, typical offenders come from certain socio-economic, gender and racial groups. So if you were to picture a typical criminal in your mind, would she look like this girl? This girl and this guy were both in gangs and ended up locked up in prison. And they do not look like what you would probably picture as being a stereotypical offender. That guy's now got a really good career as a model. But these aren't the kind of pictures that, you know, we would put into our head. When making your picture, would you picture a female at all? If you were asked to picture, you know, in your head a criminal, would you even think of a female or would you think of a male? And what would they look like? A lot of people in this world that are very rich and powerful and look very ordinary have been accused of committing crime, but they're not the kind of people that would immediately come to crime. What about this group? Do these people look like the kinds of people who commit crime? Well, this group of people were arrested in Melbourne, I think it was in 2019, at about 3 o'clock in the morning because they had hold of a policeman and they were beating the crap out of him. They don't look like your typical drunken nightclub criminals, do they? In fact, the young couple on the right are a married couple who run a daycare centre. Very respectable people, and yet there they were beating up a police officer at 3 o'clock in the morning. Another myth, victims and offenders usually are unknown to each other. That stranger that is breaking into your house is probably not breaking into your house to rape you. Probably just breaking into, these days, nick your car keys so they can take your car, but certainly not to hurt you. The most dangerous man to a woman is someone she knows, so their partner, sibling or parent. Males, on the other hand, are more likely to be victimised by strangers, but still at risk from friends and things like that. Okay, I just need to get rid of the voice on that one, so we will just pause. Okay, the final myth is that sentences are too lenient. There is a lot of suggestion out there that the public wants stiffer sentences. The public is becoming quite punitive and wanting to see people just locked up. Our jails are already running at well over capacity and there is just simply no room to put a lot more people in there. Our current state government has a policy of not wanting to put young people into detention, so they are trying to find different ways to respond to their offending. But overall, most criminal matters proceeding to court are finalised at the Magistrates' Court, where there is no jury, and most of them, the vast majority of them, will plead guilty and just be sentenced by the magistrate, and the vast majority of those sentences will be non-custodial. You'll learn a lot more about the Magistrates' Court in police courts and criminal law with Greg, but that's usually what happens. Everything just about goes through the Magistrates' Court, even if it's a committal to see if it's going to go to trial with a jury, it'll go there first, and the magistrate will then commit it for trial or it'll go to a higher court. We don't have the death penalty in this country, so we don't have an eye for an eye, as it were. And we don't even have a life sentence here that means life until the person dies. Usually there is a non-parole period set there, so there is the opportunity for people to get out of prison. Okay. The US is really highly punitive already. They have the 3 strikes rule, which can lead to people who've committed 3 relatively minor crimes being locked up for decades. We don't have that here, thank goodness, because it doesn't work. It just clogs up the system. So yes, the myth that sentences are too lenient is definitely true. Okay, that is the end of the lecture content for this week. I will see you all in class on Friday.